Hey everybody, how's it going? This is TUSDarryl and welcome to my, second batch review of batches. Yeah, nailed it. It's been a while since I've made a video for this channel, and that's not for lack of trying or anything like that. There's just this little, expansion called Final Fantasy XIV and Walker. That kind of had me and Dion's attention, so DuoQueue stuff came first, So look out for Endwalker when that drops, if it's not already. Well, not the game, but the game, yes, look out for that. That's damn good. Play Final Fantasy XIV. But, I mean, where we stand on that game, on that expansion. Look out for that, as well as more to come in the future. But in the meantime, for this channel, we have 3 games lined up. It's just me. Who's we? I'm the only one here. First up on the list is Severed Steel. Severed Steel is a free runner, if I could put it that way, first, and a first-person shooter second. Or at least that's how I would take it. It has a lot in common with the game that Dion and I played over for DuoQueue, Ghost Runner. But unlike Ghost Runner, it lacks the control to keep the highs high, often finding itself along the middle of the okay, that was awesome scale, if I could put it that way. The game is clunky and takes a little getting used to, but there's something about it. I don't know, once it gets going, it's a lot of high-octane fun. If Ghost Runner is a great representation of what it's like to be a badass cyber ninja, then Severed Steel perfectly captures the magic of being in the Matrix, when the awkward controls don't get in the way. You can dive, slide, and shoot, obviously, in this game, but it took me a bit to really get the hang of diving, since once you dive, you just kind of keep sliding until you do something else. The clunkiness definitely shows when you're trying to execute precise movements. Another issue I often ran into was not having enough room to really pull off most of the stunts I wanted to pull off. Diving and sliding can take you across the room so quickly that sometimes I wonder why they even bothered adding a jump button. Alright, because there are platforming sections in this game as well. Guess that's another tick in the ate my own words box. Thanks. Thankfully, any clunkiness experienced is mitigated by the ability to use bullet time to give yourself some time to think and redirect yourself a bit. Environments are destructible, which is really freaking awesome, especially after you get the totally not a Mega Man canon. On another note, the UI design feels like it was placeholder for something else, but it's not what I would deem atrocious. It's just simple. That's the best way I could put it. But hey, you know what? The music kicks butt, which is really awesome, and something that this game really needed to really give you that feeling of I'm a badass in the Matrix. Definitely going to be bumping these tracks when I'm working or taking out the trash or something, since everything the music does for you makes you feel epic. All in all, the game is definitely fun, and I could definitely recommend it, if it weren't priced at $25. Now, I'm not saying that the game isn't worth playing. It's definitely a blast to play and has good things going for it. But unless you're the type of person who'd play this kind of game often, I'm not sure if the main campaign alone is something you'd buy the game for, since it's only 2 hours long. That said, if you are the type of person who would play this game often and want to get in on the level editor that is coming up and the firefight challenge mode that comes with it, then by all means, go for it. But otherwise, for everyone else, I'm going to have to give this game a caution. Definitely worth picking up on sale, just, not for $25. Moving on to the next game, we've got Dusk Diver. Yeah, it's anime time. Hope you're ready for some B-tier anime goodness, because that's what you're going to get with Dusk Diver. Now, I know calling it B-tier sounds like it's an insult, but honestly, I walked into it expecting it to be B-tier, which could still be perceived as insulting, but you know, if I wanted this anyway, despite the tier I already pictured in my mind for it, then that means there has to be something good here, right? Or at least something I was looking forward to. I mean, it looked like it was on a small budget to begin with, at least from the jump, for me. And did it disappoint? No. The game is good, casual fun that doesn't last super long. Combat is pretty standard for a character action game, though I would have preferred if it was more fluid and less, I'm going to say, restrictive. When it comes to character action games, I'm spoiled by the likes of, Nier Automata, Devil May Cry, games where I can hit you really hard, but also dash away anytime I feel like I need to ditch in the middle of a combo. And some games are easier or are better with that kind of thing than the way it's executed here in Dusk Diver. That aside, the characters are enjoyable enough that they can get the ball rolling. They can be a lot of fun when they are on screen. That said, don't expect the game's story to enthrall you. Just about every anime trope you can think of, besides the lewd ones, surprisingly, is in this game's narrative. You know what I'm getting at. If you've seen any shonen anime or even a handful of them, then you know what to expect. With that said, it's the extra stuff in the game that took me by surprise. It takes a few notes out of the pages of the Persona franchise and dumbs them down to whatever their budget is. But for what you're getting out of it, it's decent. There are friendship events that can teach your party, in quotations, not sure if we can even call it that here, different abilities for Yumo, the protagonist, to use in combat. Not to mention that to get enough points to unlock these events, you'll need to go and eat at various shops in the city, which serve each character's favorite food and gives you buffs. Fill up the familiarity meter and suddenly you'll be able to order from your convenience store, or the convenience store that Yumo works at, which is your base of operations. Could you imagine that? Like, you can't order, like no app on your phone, not Grubhub, not DoorDash, not nothing. It's just not functional at all until you've physically visited that restaurant yourself and been there enough times until you're considered a regular. Then you can unlock them in your food app of choice to order to come straight to your door. Man, that would be weird. And if you're one of those people who, has to pick between sub or dub, it's one or the other, one's the best and the other one's the worst, if you're that kind of person, or just simply want to know if there are different options for voice acting in this game, unfortunately, you're going to be stuck with Japanese only throughout the experience, which may be a deal breaker for some of you. What might also be a deal breaker is the price of the game. It's $35. It's $35. I don't think I can reiterate that enough. Now, don't get me wrong, there is clearly more content here to justify the price than there is for Severed Steel, but that's hardly comparable since both games set out to accomplish two different things. One game relies on a level-based structure with high scores and this thing. It's meant to be replayed over and over again. This game is, at least from what I completed, you can keep playing after it's done, but for the most part, there's not much else to do. I feel like you'll get more bang out of your buck out of repeating Severed Steel over and over again because you're improving on how well you can play. Whereas this game has a clear narrative, a clear set path that you want to go, or that it wants to take you, and then it's done. So I'd rather pay the $25 for Severed Steel if I had to pick over the $35 for this game, and I'm going to get into why now. The combat can get very repetitive. Not to mention, the soundtrack can feel very limited at times. And to top that off, I enjoyed being in the overworld more than I did the corridor-like mazes of other dimensions that you go into, where the combat takes place. So you have the maze-like corridors and whatnot, which already feel repetitive by design, on top of the repetitive combat, on top of the repetitive onslaught of enemies that don't have very interesting designs, and it just feels like everything that has to do with like combat and being in those areas and whatnot is where the game kind of goes for me. But the slice of life aspects on the outside in the overworld, they make me go, I like this. Because there's just more variety out there. And to expand on my complaints of it being repetitive from earlier, first of all, you can get more combos and abilities and whatnot over time as you level up, but you don't get much more than you start with. You might think, if you were to play it, you might think, oh, this is more than enough for me. But for me, I'm a little spoiled with most of the character action games I played. Even if I ignore the AAA ones, the other indie ones I have played at some point, far and few in between, they do it better, unfortunately, for this game. There's just more variety out there in the overworld than there is in the dungeon-like fights and this area that you get into when you're actually getting into the combat of the game, which feels like it wants to be its meat and bones, and it's just not enough there. The meat is outside of there. If this game was more focused on the overworld and took what happens in the other dimensions into the overworld more often, that would have been great for me. But it didn't. I guess on the bright side, the game doesn't overstay its welcome, and generally it's easy to complete. Very easy to complete. You're not going to struggle. In fact, there are a lot of things in there that you can kind of exploit to make that process faster. Despite my praises for the game and the things it does right, for what I expected as a B-tier anime character fighter game, I can't recommend it for $35. It did this thing where I walked into it expecting it to be B-tier, and it very much is, but then it got my hopes up when it started doing a bit more, and I was like, hey, okay, I didn't see this coming, I didn't expect you to do this, and then I expected you to go farther, and you didn't. And that's what has me bummed. So I can't in good faith recommend this game for $35. 20? Sure. 10? Go for it. But 35? Sorry pal, that's gonna get a caution from me. Ooh boy, okay, this last one it's a doozy. Killer 7. First of all, I'm familiar with Suda51 games. Very familiar. I haven't played No More Heroes. I haven't played that series yet, but I'm definitely familiar with his style from other Suda games I've played. Now, you're probably wondering why I'm emphasizing the word familiar so much. Well, that's simply because no matter how familiar I am with his games, nothing could have prepared me for this one. I'll start with the good. The game is very eerie and creepy. Yet it's not a horror game. It definitely did scare me a few times, but it's not a horror game in the slightest. Okay, no, that's a lie. It is a horror game in the slightest, but not by definition, I guess, if you want to put it that way. It's twisted in all the right ways, like a pretzel, only with blood instead of salt. The gameplay, while awkward at first, is really engaging. It plays kind of like a rail shooter, but you can control where you're going, sort of, kind of. You can choose your paths and whatnot, but you dictate, when you want to go and when you don't want to go. You can turn around, you can go in different doors and different rooms and stuff. It's a rail shooter you can control. You hold down the A button to run along a predetermined path, but along that path, the Heaven Smiles, some creepy looking dudes. I am not going to go into the narrative here because it's a bonkers narrative. I feel like anything I say, if you want to play it, is spoiler territory. But that tangent aside, you go along a predetermined path holding the A button, and you'll encounter these Heaven Smiles, which will appear along your path, and you have to shoot them with whichever personality or smith you are using. That's right, you play different kind of characters in the game, each with their own special ability and weapon. Canonically, they are a group of assassins under one name. But that's all I'll go on that, because again, if I go into any more detail, spoilers. I mean, I said that their personality, so that kind of should allude to something in your mind, but, it do be like that. Also, the game itself literally calls them personalities, or smiths, in the pause menu, so I'm not really spoiling much there. Now for my complaints. And unlike with Severed Steel and Dusk Diver, I've only really got one with this game. You can't skip through text. You can skip cutscenes entirely, though I wouldn't recommend it since they're generally awesome. But conversations with the ghosts, which is what I'm going to call them, can't be skipped through. In the sense that, if you're reading through dialogue in like a JRPG or something like that, and it shows like the X button, like press X or press A or press whatever to move on to the next line of dialogue, you can't do that here. And to me, that's terrible because I can read faster than they can eerie speak. And generally they don't speak in big old sentences or anything like that. It's typically just like maybe a sentence that has like 5 words in it. Oftentimes you'll see one sentence words. Master, this is bad. This is really bad, like terrible. It's like world-ending Doom levels of bad. You have to use the guy with the mask. Deuces.
Why do you have a shotgun?
I just want to talk to him.
Dad, this is ridiculous.
I just want to talk to him. I just want to talk to him. I just want to talk to him. I just want to shoot him. I just want to talk to him.
You can't shoot.
Like there's not enough there to warrant me sitting there that long. Like I can click and get all the information that I just said really quickly, but instead you kind of just sit there, listen to the creepy person talk to you, and you're like, okay, I read the word master, move on to the next word, please. If they spoke straight up English, or clear English, I should say, because there's some English words that slip through, that would be fine. But the issue is that it's a very distorted kind of English, but kind of not deal. So after you get used to it, after the whole nuance of, wow, this is such a creepy way of speaking, fades away, it just becomes the equivalent of radio static. And by the time you're done reading what they're saying, like I said earlier, you're just going to want to skip to the next line because all of it kind of blends together. Versus someone speaking clear English to you, where despite the fact that you could read faster than I'm speaking right now, you're probably still willing to hear me out because I have different inflections going on in my voice, which makes what I'm saying more interesting. But for them, for those ghost-like creatures, it's typically this monotone voice. I'm not doing it justice, but you get the point. It's just this tone over and over again, unless it's a character who is not dead or not a ghost. But I can go on about that forever. And considering that that's the only real personal complaint I have about the game, I'd say that's a very good thing. The on-the-rails exploration and odd camera angles may be a turnoff for some people, as well as the weird form of noir storytelling and just Suda being Suda. It'll probably turn some people off, but trust me when I say that this game doesn't disappoint. In fact, it's one hell of a ride that I can't recommend enough. Killer 7 deserves the status of a cult classic that it has. And if it wasn't clear, I'm giving this one a go for it. It's the only go for it in this video. I think that's a first, where I've given 2 cautions in a row, and the last thing is a go for it. Killer 7 is $20 for a little over 10 hours of content, so you know you're getting your bang for your buck. And hell, if you suck at the game, it's going to go on even longer. But with that said, I hope you guys have enjoyed your stay and have enjoyed this batch review. It's been a while since I made a review like this, so I'm a little out of practice, clearly. And you're going to hear that too during the Endwalker Where We Stand on DuoQueue if you haven't seen that already, or if it's not up already. It's going to take a little bit for me to get into the swing of things, but if you enjoyed this, let me know. If you have any criticisms or critiques, I'm not cutting that out, I'm leaving that there, then by all means, let me know in the comments below. But until then, I hope you guys have enjoyed your stay. I'm TUSDarryl. I'll see you in the next batch review, or over there on DuoQueue. See you guys later.